it was clear why the CDC wanted to hide it. It wanted to hide it because what it showed was 7.7% of these vaccine enthusiasts reported needing medical care that they attributed most likely to the vaccine after getting the COVID shot. 7.7, that's 1 in 13, and on average, they sought medical care 2 to 3 times each. You don't go to seek medical care 2 to 3 times each. And 75% of those were hospitalization, emergency room, or urgent care. So these were serious issues. From the clinical trial, apparently, it knew that these could potentially be issues. It put it in the design documents, but it never made it into the actual system itself. V-Safe was not designed. It's the closest thing to mens rea, purposeful intent to design this system to assure that it would never actually show a safety issue.
I ask you, the 1986 law set up a task force. It was disbanded in 1998. It was supposed to produce reports on how to improve vaccine safety. How many of those reports were ever produced to Congress?
So the mandate for safer childhood vaccines, which is what you're referring to under the 1986 Act, the third section, at 3 parts, required a biannual report to Congress that explained how HHS, in which the FDA, CDC, NIH are all located, made vaccines safer in the prior 2 years. The total number of reports since 1986 are 0. 0. Never been submitted. The second part of the mandate for safer childhood vaccine creates a task force, which you just mentioned, Senator. That task force is comprised of the head of the NIH, CDC, and FDA, and they're supposed to make recommendations on how to make vaccines safer to the Secretary of HHS. That task force made one set of recommendations in 1998 and then was disbanded and has now been under Secretary Kennedy put together. The first part of the mandate, if I may add, is what actually requires HHS to make vaccines safer. Right? Because they made the pharma companies immune to liability. They took away the normal market forces that would drive them to actually engage in safety, recognizing that Congress, in its wisdom, at least in that part, was wise. It made HHS responsible for vaccine safety. And of course, if HHS is not doing the simple parts of the mandate for safer childhood vaccines, which underpins all of vaccine safety in this country, of putting biannual reports to Congress, of having a task force, you think they're doing the hard part in part 1? Of course not.
Talk about V-Safe. Switching gears, kind of sticking to COVID. I mean, you're the one that had to sue. You know, I think one of the interesting, I think actually the very last sentence in Dr. Scott's testimony is, let me find it. The data are public.
Yeah, the data certainly are not public. First of all, when it comes to the clinical trials for each vaccine, we've had to sue the FDA to get the underlying clinical trial reports. For most of them, we've sued for the Varivax vaccine, for the Hep B vaccine, for many of them, and for the COVID vaccine. That's
quick,
not public.
I'm going to get back to V-Safe.
V-Safe.
Dr. Rogers, isn't it true that even peer reviewers don't get to look at the data of studies? That's common,
right?
Generally true. I mean, what is the truth in terms of how often researchers actually make the raw data available?
I mean, a proper study should make the data available. That's a norm, but that doesn't happen in the case of
part of the problem with that, the Anderson et al. Study in Denmark, that's being touted that aluminum is not a problem, is people questioning cannot get the data, even though it's already been de-identified, correct?
I mean, that's true.
Yes. And by the way, the data safety link?
Yeah, the VSD, the vaccine safety data link.
What happened to that? How available is that right now?
It's not. In 2000, up until 2000, it was part of the CDC, and you could get access to it through a FOIA. A number of people did. Published studies the CDC didn't fit the policy about vaccines, and so they then shifted it over to a trade association to get it out of the reach of the Freedom of Information Act and others. So it's been distributed. You can't get access to VSD.
That's just the it's not exactly transparency, is it?
It's actually literally, it's not only is it not transparent, you cannot get the data underlying VSD studies. They published like the data for 2 of them, which is antithetical to how science, you can't do reproducibility. Not only that, It's selection bias, because if you want to do a study, it has to go through CDC's clearance process, actually, which means that only studies that conform with its policy that vaccines are safe are going to get published.
So let's talk about the V-Safe, which was established for the COVID injection. 10 million people voluntarily signed up. I mean, I think what they were reported is completely inadequate. But talk about how you had to sue and how long it took you to get the data from what was supposed to be the transparent safety surveillance system, and then what the results were. Just quick tell that story.
Over 2 years, actually collectively almost 3 years of litigation it took. V-Safe was a safety system rolled out in December 2020 along with the release of the first COVID vaccine. Up until that point, CDC touted VAERS, and they said, well, VAERS isn't reliable. We're going to have V-Safe. V-Safe, they said, was a robust, rapid way to identify safety issues with COVID-19 vaccine. 10 million Americans signed up very rapidly over about 6 months. These were the vaccine enthusiasts who got the vaccine from December 2020, and about 9 million in those first 6 months. And they got a form to fill out every day for 7 days after the shot, then every week for 6 weeks, and then 3 times after that. On that form, we checked the boxes. There were basically 2 types of check the boxes. First, check the box was for symptoms. But the symptoms that the CDC chose to include were the ones that they say are normal and fine after the vaccine, and they only collect that for 7 days, what they call reactogenicity. They're good. They show the vaccine is working. You're having an immune response. So that data was completely irrelevant for assessing safety. In fact, they reported 60, 70% of people reporting having that, and the CDC said, great. That leaves only one other check-the-box data that was actually worthwhile, and that was folks seeking hospital care, missing school or work, or not performing normal daily activities. Well, what the CDC was doing is they were pumping out study after study after study that only showed the first week after the shot for those 3 categories. Well, we wanted to see the full data set. My client, the Informed Consent Action Network, wanted to see the full data set. So we said to the CDC, hey, this stuff's totally de-identified. Just release it. It's literally sitting there in files. You could release it in 2 minutes. It took us almost two federal lawsuits, a year and a half of litigation, 2 years of litigation almost to get that data. And when we did, it was clear why the CDC wanted to hide it. It wanted to hide it because what it showed was 7.7% of these vaccine enthusiasts reported needing medical care that they attributed most likely to the vaccine after getting the COVID shot. 7.7, that's 1 in 13. And on average, they sought medical care 2 to 3 times each. You don't go to seek medical care 2 to 3 times each. And 75% of those were hospitalization, emergency room, or urgent care. So these were serious issues. I don't know if, and that was the only data point that V-Safe could possibly have used to actually assess safety. If 1 in 13 seeking medical care on average 2 to 3 times each of the manner I just described is not enough to pull the plug, it was clear V-Safe was not designed to assess safety. V-Safe was designed to affirm its a priori belief this shot was safe. If it wanted to make V-Safe actually a system that would assess safety, it would have added, for example, a check the box for chest pain, right? So they can assess myocarditis. It could have added a check the box for the numerous adverse events of special interest that its own V-Safe protocol identified 2 months before it rolled out, including myocarditis, pericarditis, all the issues blood clotting we ended up seeing. From the clinical trial, apparently, it knew that these could potentially be issues. It put it in the design documents, but it never made it into the actual system itself. V-Safe was not designed. It's the closest thing to mens rea, purposeful intent to design this system to assure that it would never actually show a safety issue. I don't think they expected that many people to report seeking medical care.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Thanks. I just want to emphasize that the last thing I want to do is cause any harm. The last thing I want to do is the last thing I want is for anyone to be harmed by a vaccine. If there is a vaccine safety issue, I want it to be detected. And there are multiple overlapping layers of monitoring systems that I do think work pretty well. Are they perfect? No. But when it comes to, de-identifying data and all that, it's a little complicated. So, but there are a number of other data monitoring systems. But it's just really important that we understand that there is not some grand conspiracy amongst the CDC, FDA, EMA, around the entire world, thousands of scientists and doctors and public health experts, you really believe are conspiring for the sake of helping pharmaceutical industries profit?
I think
Mayor respond.
I think this is a case example of why that happens, is because if you conduct a study and get the results that runs counter to their interests, they will destroy you. I mean, again, I had Dr. Peter McCulloch, I had Dr. Pierre Corey, I had a bunch of other people come before Congress, testify truthfully. Their careers were destroyed. They were destroyed. It doesn't take too many people to be targeted and made an example of before everybody else kind of goes, I don't think I'll step out of line. And so I think that's, again, the sympathy shown by Mr. Bigtree and Mr. Siri in terms of the people that they convinced to do the study. They didn't basically want to rat him out. I'm the one that ratted him out. Okay, and so I forced him along here. Okay, and again, and I hope, God, I truthfully hope, because I think the people who did those studies, Dr. Zer, what is it?
Dr. Zervos.
Again, I don't want to see them lose their job. I'd like to pin a medal on them in terms of, good, you conducted a great study. Shame on you for not publishing it, but we understand because we know you probably would have had your career destroyed. All those years in medical schools, all the lives that you save when you treat patient, you won't be able to do anymore because the certification bureaus, the boards, they will destroy your career. Again, I've seen it. I know the people. It happened during COVID. So yeah, I mean, is it a grand conspiracy? I don't know what you call it. It's certainly what I would call the COVID cartel and the medical establishment cartel and captured agencies. Yeah, that absolutely exists.